into this story by Kim Iversen, and this is a warning for everyone. What happened to Kim Iversen can happen to any one of us. So I wanted to talk about this because I do feel like it's not something that is discussed often. And I think it may happen more often than people realize. Kim Iversen had her identity stolen. And Kim is a YouTube commentator, actually also on Rumble as well, political commentator. She's been doing this for quite some time. But someone stole her identity, and wait till you hear what they bought with it. Check this out.
Was a victim of identity theft, and someone stole a car using my information. This is what happened to me on Friday when I was on the air doing this show. I started receiving alerts from my credit card company, actually, from Capital One, that my credit was being run. Basically, I was getting these alerts that there had been some credit inquiries on my credit reports. And I saw that there were 4 notifications of this. So when the show was over, I went and logged into my Capital One account to find out what was going on. They rerouted me to the credit aspect of it and showed that there were these 4 inquiries on my credit report. Inquiries that I absolutely was not the one making. So I thought, oh no, somebody is actually, they clearly have access to my information. Otherwise, these would not show up on my credit report. So 4 different ones. I recognized one of them. I thought, well, this one, I know that they do, I think. I was mistaken. I actually thought one of them was a credit card company. And so I thought, okay, somebody's trying to open up a credit card under my name. But I ended up turning to ChatGPT, believe it or not, and went and you know how a lot of times on your credit report or when you go to your bank statements, a lot of times it's kind of abbreviated. You don't really see the full, whoever you bought the thing from or whoever was running the credit. It's kind of an abbreviation. And so they weren't exactly easy to read, these 4 different inquiries. So I copied and pasted them and put them into ChatGPT. And I said to Chat, hey, somebody is trying to open up some sort of line of credit under my name. Can you identify what they're trying to buy? I mean, is this a credit card? Is this a personal loan? Like, what type of credit are they trying to get under my name? And ChatGPT looks at this and says, well, they're trying to buy a car. And here's my reasoning for thinking they're trying to buy a car, because this is a lender for one, this is a lender that does many different types of loans, but they also specialize in car loans. Here's another one. Most of the lenders do very different types of loans, but mostly car loans. And the reason why Chat knew that it was for sure a car loan was because one of the lenders was an abbreviated form for an actual car dealership. And so Chat says that's the actual car dealership, and they might even be there now trying to buy the car. So you should call that car dealership, is what ChatGPT told me. So yeah.
So I don't really use ChatGPT. I think I tried to use it one time when I was looking for a movie to watch or something like that. But it seems like it did help Kim out in this particular situation. Now, I do want to explain to everybody, it can happen to any one of you. It happened to Kim. She's pretty well known in political commentary space. She has a large following, but it can happen to anyone. You don't have to be someone that is, on YouTube or anything like that. And what was scary to me is that they bought a car. It's not like they stole her identity and bought like clothing items or something like that. Either way, that's still wrong. But they bought a car, like an actual car. That is a big dollar investment, and it does go on your credit report. This is insane. Like, people have become very bold nowadays. Crazy stuff.
Yes, I mean, I used Chat on this. It ended up working out really well. There's a lot of things I don't use Chat for, but when it comes to things like this, the computer, the AI is smart enough to detect what exactly are these abbreviations, that my human brain is not aware of. And luckily, Chat identified this as a car dealership and somebody trying to buy a car. So I contacted that car dealership. They actually told me that it was a car dealership in Arlington, Texas. When I'm living right now, I'm in Boise, Idaho at the moment, and that somebody had attempted to buy a car there, or maybe even successfully did. So I call them up and I get on the phone with them and I say, look, this is who I am. And somebody has apparently been trying to buy a car there, and they might even be there. Well, at first, they were like, okay, you know, I got the receptionist, and they're like, let me get you to the right person. And of course I get through to voicemail. And so I call back, and they, well, okay, let me get you to a different person. And of course I end up in voicemail again. So I call back a third time and I say, listen, the credit is being run right now. I'm getting these alerts, and this person might be there right now trying to buy a car right now. And the person says to me, well, actually, I did ask, and I found out that this was yesterday. And I said, did they get the car? And the person said, yeah, they did. They got the car. So
that's crazy. That's absolutely insane that they were able to use her identity in another state. She's not even in Texas, in another state, and drive off with the car. And what? That's how quickly it can happen.
Finally, this person is able to page the general manager, get the general manager on the phone. And the general manager says to me, yeah, you know, I can't really give you a ton of information. We'll work with the police. But yes, this person was in. They had the right identification. They had identification. So they were using my name. They used my social security. They used my birthday. That is the information they had. They didn't have the right address. And they actually didn't really have the right name. The name wasn't quite right, but it's still, but it worked well enough for them when they ran the credit that apparently the lenders were not triggered that this was fraud. The name was
because they had the social security number. So even though they didn't have the name completely right, they had her social security number
just slightly wrong. But nonetheless, they were able to drive off with the car. Now, I do not know how much this car is valued at, but I would imagine that, you know, maybe it was anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 of a car that they were able to run off with under my name, under my social, under my birthday. Now, what does that mean for me? Well, that means that I'm potentially on the hook for this car that is, you know, obviously this person's not going to make those payments. They just stole a car, and they stole a car using my name and my identity. And so, and they had a different, you know, they had an ID with their photograph on it and all of my information except for my address. And they bought a car with this. So I'm now, according to the lender, I would be the one that's held responsible. Where this is ruinous is I would be the one that has to pay back this loan unless I could prove that I am not the person who bought this car. So immediately the right step to do is, first, I called the dealership and I said, this wasn't me. I'm all the way in the state of Idaho. Which is a good alibi. You have to actually come up with an alibi. So when somebody steals your identity, you have to treat it like it's not just you're a victim and woe is me. You have to prove you're not the perpetrator. That's the thing that sucks in identity theft.
You're not treated like the victim. And it's true. There was a movie about this. It was a true story about a woman who was a teacher, and it happened to her. And she was just given the runaround, and she had to basically like prove that she was the victim, even though she was the victim. Meanwhile, this person was just running around like ripping through her credit, and there was nothing that, like, the authorities were just basically like, you have to prove to us that you are who you are. And it's really wild, but that's how it works. Now, there are some things that you can do, which I want to tell you in just a second, but I want you to hear about how she was able to get this fixed.
And you have to remember this. You have to come up with your alibi as quickly as possible and document it. If you were somewhere at that time that you think this theft happened, you need to get the video surveillance. You've got to do everything you can to prove it wasn't you, because they will stick this on you. The lender will act like you're the one you bought a car. Who knows what you did with the car? You're just trying to get out of paying for it. You're coming up with some scam saying that you were the victim of identity theft, and really you're just the loser that won't pay for your car. So in the event of identity theft, just remember you have to come up with an alibi. And sometimes it's not that easy. Luckily, in my circumstance, the person physically went into the dealership and physically bought a car and physically drove off with the car. It would be a lot harder if this were an online credit card that they opened up and charged it up. Especially if it was in the area where you actually reside. That would be very, very difficult to prove that it wasn't you. You'd have to go and gather surveillance. I mean, you have to go and do all this legwork. So just keep that in mind if this happens to you, not to just set it and, well, it wasn't me, so I don't know, they'll figure it out. No. You got to go build your alibi. So I had to go to the police here in Idaho. Luckily for me, I happened to be also at the day that this happened. It actually happened on Thursday. I got the alerts on Friday and they said, well, it happened yesterday, and they drove off with the car. Earlier that day, while they were, actually Thursday, we actually ran a pre-recorded show because we needed the day off to do business stuff. My producers needed to go to do government stuff. And I also needed to go do government stuff on Thursday. So it worked out for me. It's the only time in my life I can say, I am so glad I was sitting all day at the DMV. But I was sitting all day at the DMV and with all of my documentation in order to change my driver's license to a real ID, which means I had my passport, my birth certificate, my social security card, my marriage certificate, I had all of these things to prove that I was me in order to get a real ID. Plus they took a photograph of me. Plus they have surveillance all over the DMV. So I lucked out that my alibi is airtight. Thank goodness, because this wasn't a small purchase. A lot of people, when I told them I was a victim of identity theft, they said, well, I had somebody steal $800 from me, or somebody else said, oh, somebody else opened up a credit card and took $1,000 or however much money. This is, tens of thousands of dollars for a car.
So let me tell you how you might be able to prevent this from happening to you. Some of the steps that you can take, because it's scary, when something like this does happen. Number one, if you are using a bank, one of the things that you can do, depending on your bank, but I think most banks have this now, one of the things that you can do is you can put a spending limit on your account. This is very crucial. It may sometimes seem like a pain, but it's worth it in the long run. What does that mean? What does that look like? If you have a spending limit on your account, this could mean that, let's say your limit is $1,000. That means that anytime you try to make a purchase for an item that is $1,000 or greater, you have to call it in. The bank will automatically decline the charge because that is your spending limit. So I'll give you an example of what that looks like, right? So if your spending limit is $1,000, and let's say you are trying to rent a new apartment or something like that, let's say you have to put down a security deposit of $1,000, and you say, okay, well, I got to put down $1,000. You would have to call the bank and say, hello, I am about to make a purchase for $1,000 to said company, and I'm here at the company, right? I'm about to do it right now. Can you put it through? Otherwise, your bank will block it. The moment that they try to charge that account, that $1,000, it's going to reject it because the bank is going to say, whoa, 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 this is past the spending limit. So we need approval from you in order to make this go through. That's one of the things that you can do. I have that. I know other people that have that. So that's a good one to have, because I'm telling you, people get hit. Let me tell you another way that people get hit. A lot of people like to use these online apps, these food delivery service apps, Grubhub, DoorDash, Uber Eats. Do not save your debit card or your credit card in those app sites. I know it's easier that way because you can just select food and your payment information is already there. But there are people like hackers and etc. They know how to get that information from those websites. You got to be very careful with DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, how a lot of the payment sites, the apps that people frequent. Grubhub's a big one. And I know people that have been hit by Grubhub. So don't save your payment information in those delivery service apps. That's a big one. Yeah, it sucks because when you go to use it, you're going to have to enter it, whatever. Use PayPal or something. Do not leave your card attached to those sites. That's another thing that you can do. And this is not saying that Kim did that. I'm just giving you guys some tips. Another thing that you can do, which Kim does mention later in this video, is a credit lock, right? So putting a lock on your credit reports, meaning that it can't hit your credit without your approval. Because a purchase, obviously, if someone purchases a car, that is going to go on your credit. Like there's, no getting around that really. But that's something we'll get into the credit lock thing in just a second. But one of the first things is that spending limit. And some of you have this option as well at your bank that if there is unusual activity where your bank will alert you, they'll either send you a text message or an email that says, did you make these purchases? So if it's something that is unusual activity for you, like for example, if you don't normally go to the Nike store and buy a pair of Nike sneakers every day, and all of a sudden this hits your account, bam, 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 your bank may say, whoa, this is unusual activity. If you live in Massachusetts and you don't usually go to New York and, charge your card for all these different hotel rooms, your bank account may flag that as unusual activity and try not to let that go through. But you have to talk to your bank about these things. James Brown said a long time ago, or at least Eddie Murphy said, that James Brown told him to bury your money in the ground. And I just think about, like, as we get into electronic payments, you just got to be careful. Just don't save that information there. Now, she did go on to talk about the credit. Let's get into that a little bit.
Actually forgetting, people, I'm sure, switch out of that job a lot, revolving door, and somebody else gets in there and maybe the file's not, or maybe they sell the debt to some collection and the collector's like, nah, we'll still nab him. We'll get her, we'll get that Kim lady. And they could come after me and I have to prove once again for however many years, I don't know. It could be a nightmare, that kind of a saga that goes on forever where I have to continue to prove. I had an alibi. I wasn't in Texas. I was sitting at the Idaho DMV. Here are all the police reports. This is a government report. The investigation's been done. It wasn't me. Stop coming after me. Do not ruin my credit. They could still do, which is a 7-year freeze, which requires a much deeper level of scrutiny from people that are giving you credit. They have to do more double checks and triple checks and whatnot. And that you have to actually file physically. You have to send in proof of your identity to one of the 3 credit bureaus. And that puts a freeze on your credit for 7 years. That's more intense. And that one credit bureau shares it with the other 2. So you only have to do it once to one of the credit bureaus and then they share it. But right now, what you should do to protect yourself, the lesson I learned was go and freeze your credit and unfreeze it when you need it. And every year, just put a reminder on your calendar to keep your credit frozen for a year, or do the extra level step, which is what I'm going to do now that I know that I've been a victim. And I'm going to be submitting all the paperwork for the 7-year freeze. I've already put the initial 1-year freeze on, but I want a more severe freeze on my credit because of this. Because this person is running around with an ID with with a lot of my information and potentially trying to open up other lines of credit. So do that. Now, people have been asking me, what about these companies that, they monitor your identity, they protect you from identity theft? I've had 2 of those services actively, and this still happened to me. So, maybe my information was already out there before I signed up for these services a year or 2 ago, or 3 years. One of the services I've had for many years.
Yeah, I don't even know if those services actually work the way that they say that they do. I haven't been able to get any concrete proof about that. And there's a lot of scams out there too. Like there's some of these companies that say we will protect you from this, and they actually don't. So you got to be careful. But that is just really bizarre to me that someone was able to walk into the dealership pretending to be her and buy a car. But like I said, this happened to a teacher many years ago. It was one of the more prominent cases of identity theft before people even really knew what that was all about. It was such a big deal. They made a movie about it, but it was a teacher that it happened to, and someone did that to her. They stole her identity. They bought a car. They went on to try to buy a house. And could you imagine someone on a teacher's salary, having that happen to them? It happens. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.